Welcome to the Bywords Show. I'm your host, Hannah Hughes. Bywords is all about equipping women for purposeful living by starting conversations, celebrating stories, and inspiring faith. In a world that applauds the hustle, I'm here to help you break free from the lies and come back to what really matters. It's time to get real, get rooted in truth, and come alive in relationship with Jesus so you can show up to each day with intention and confidence no matter where you're at in your story. Here we believe that embracing our stories brings hope, healing, and purpose to the process, and sharing our stories helps others do the same. Whether you're looking for a midweek faith refresh, practical tools for pursuing your dreams, or just need some good old-fashioned girl talk, you're in the right place. Grab your latte and let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Byword Show. Today is the day. You guys, I'm so excited for today's episode for many reasons, but I just have to say, we've got Molly DeFrank with us today. And Molly, I read your book, Digital Detox, is that what it's called? The Digital Detox book a couple years ago. And I loved it so much. And I've been like, man, I would love to talk to Molly, have you on the show. And then recently we had this episode on raising girls on the podcast. And I was like, I need to find somebody who can speak to raising boys. Then I see that you've come out with this book on that topic. And I was like, could this be more perfect? I am so excited to hear what you have to say. So if you guys didn't guess already, we're talking about raising boys today. Molly just came out with this brand new book about mothering boys. And so I'm so excited to get into this conversation. So first of all, thank you so much for being here. I am so excited.
Thank you so much for having me, Hannah. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm thrilled to hear you liked Digital Detox.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we get into this conversation, I have to ask you our first question I ask all of our guests, and that is, what's filling your cup lately? Literally, but also figuratively.
Ooh, that's good. So literally, I'm gonna go with a nice cup of black coffee. I got it right here. I love black coffee. I have to start every morning like that. I drink so many. I actually realized, I think it was like a year or two ago, I did an Instagram poll, and we found a correlation between how many cups of coffee someone drinks in a day and how many kids they have. And people were drinking the number of cups for the same number of kids they had, which cracked me up. And I drink about like
Wait, I love that.
5 or 6, which is crazy. But anyway, so that's literally. Figuratively, oh man, I want to say straight up God's word, because truly it fills my cup all the time. It's so sustaining. But one thing that's been sort of peripheral to that is Forrest Frank is like blowing up. He's like so huge. Just took my son to the Forrest Frank concert, and that guy's awesome. And he's got great music that pumps you up in the morning and you feel great. So anyway, that's one thing that I've been listening to that's just like, oh, I feel better about my day. It's a good reminder.
Yeah, that's so fun. I love that. We always have him on in our house too. It's so fun.
So good.
Oh, I love that. And also hilarious that there's a correlation between the amount of coffee you drink and the kids you have. And then hearing that you drink more than that, I'm like, well, it makes sense because boy, mom, like
Yeah,
you
right?
get it. It's wild and crazy over here. It's so funny. Yeah. So we're talking about raising boys today. You have boys, and all the boy moms who are listening, I'm sure, like, tell me all the things because it's wild out here. So you got to share with us, how'd you get on this journey of like researching raising boys and then writing this book?
Yeah. Well, so after my first book, Digital Detox, I started noticing, wow, kids are growing up completely differently now than they did when we were kids. And I couldn't believe how different, like the research was showing that they're spending so much time on their devices. And so I started diving deeper into, well, what are they not getting that we got as kids? And there are so many things that kids don't get because they're spending a full-time job worth of hours on a device. So the more I read the research, I also started seeing all these data points about how boys are falling behind, like way behind. So boys today are 2.5 times more likely to be expelled or suspended from school than girls. They're less likely to graduate high school. They're less likely to go to college. They're less likely to earn a master's degree. They're more depressed and anxious than ever before. 2/3 of young men say no one really knows me. Like they're lonely.
Wow.
It's just horrible. The boys are not doing well. So I kind of started to scratch my head and go, gosh, how do we get in front of this thing? And, you know, as a Christian mom, I'm thinking, well, the Bible is the best parenting book there is, obviously, is the best book for everything. So what can we glean out of the Bible and how can we bring that into today's world? and train up our boys and speak life into them, especially in a world that's telling them, oh, the future is female. Like you see those t-shirts all the time. Like, what does that say to a young boy growing up today? The future is
Yeah.
female, or your masculinity is toxic, and all these messages that are really just tearing down our boys. So how do we build them up and really speak life into boys and raise them the way God intended? So that was what I wanted to do. And with as a mom to three boys and three girls, but specifically those boys, I'm like, let's roll up our sleeves, let's get in there, let's do the research, let's find examples from the Bible, and let's what can we do as moms right here in the insanity and the chaos of raising little boys. And so that's what this book is. It's really practical meets biblical meets some funny stories that you're like, I thought I was the only one that went through that. So that's what the book is. Yeah, that was the inspiration.
Oh, I love it. And I feel like it's so needed. And what I love about it, I mean, so many things, but I love that you are empowering moms in this role of raising men because I feel like the young years are kind of for the moms. And then boys get older and it's like, all right, we pass them off to the dads, we pass them off to the men for all the manly things and all the masculinity. And there's such like a critical role that moms play. And so I love that we're having this conversation as the Christian moms, like, what have you found in your research and as you comb through the Bible? What is the mom's role specifically in raising young men?
Yes, that's a great question. And dads are irreplaceably important too. But
Absolutely.
moms, when our boys are young, we actually clock more hours with our kids. So that in conjunction with this very interesting tidbit, I put this in the book too, that they did a study, and by the time a child turns 13, their worldview is pretty much completely formed. So
Wow.
we have this opportunity to use that time really well to form those worldviews and hearts and minds of our kids. They've done all kinds of even secular research that shows that people with a biblical worldview, people who are active in their local church, like active believers, there are protective effects of that for mental health, for longevity. It's just really beneficial, even if you're just like a secular researcher. But we know as Christians, like that's not the only reason you pursue a relationship with God or God pursues you, but you're active in that because it's true and because God is good. There's also all these incredible benefits, but really
Yeah.
moms are typically more relational. So they did this study through Harvard over many decades, and they found that they wanted to predict what is the best predictor of longevity and health and happiness for people. And so they studied all these men, and they studied across different economic groups and different education and all races, everything. What they found was very surprising. It was not income, it was not genes, it wasn't cholesterol. What the best predictor of health, longevity, and happiness was the quality of your relationships. As moms, holding that in mind with that fact I shared earlier about two-thirds of young men say no one really knows me, like we got to step up our game here. I think it's our job and our duty and our joy to help expand our boys' ability to connect with other people. That's something that women are typically more gifted at. And so it's a huge opportunity to really help our boys, look in each other's eyes and practice that back and forth conversation, really building up understanding, loving your neighbor. And that all starts with these very basic things that I put in the book here just to help moms. Like most moms will say, I want these things for my boys, but my life is insane. And like we barely all got pants on today, you know? Like,
Right.
how do I do this lofty thing when like we have back to back stomach bugs in our house? Like you're telling me I need to instill this thing in my kid. And the thing that I discovered was that you can do these things while you're in the chaos. And there's these little deposits you're putting into the hearts and minds of your boys. And so that's what I wanted to put in this book, in the car rides, over the cereal bowls, in the bathtub or on a walk around the block. There are just conversations you can have or little things you can do to build up your boys.
Oh, I love that. And that is super encouraging because let's be real, raising boys is it's wild. It can be chaotic and messy and sometimes overwhelming. And I don't know about y'all, but there are moments because my son is my oldest. He's almost 6, and there have been times where I'm like, I am not equipped for this. I don't know how to like mold this precious child with so much energy and exuberance for life and like figuring out how to do that well without stifling their energy and like balancing also as well all these messages that our culture is now saying. So I'd love to hear from you like on that note because I know you pointed out boys today are surrounded by that. The accusations that their very existence is toxic, that their biological makeup is a problem, future is female, all of these things. So what do you think as moms, like, we need to be aware of and kind of like watch out for those lies as we're raising our young boys and trying to help them navigate? Because, you know, you pointed out that their worldview is kind of solidified by 13. That's wild. But like, that's kind of a pressure cooker season we've got there. That's the ground that we have to till.
That's exactly right. And yeah, I would say that we have to teach our boys what good, true masculinity is while they're young.
Mm,
We have this opportunity and this window of time to instill this biblical worldview in our kids and especially our boys, and showing them, teaching them, reminding them that their boyness, their masculinity is a gift that God made that can be used for good. So, the idea of masculinity, I look at the Bible and what I see is that real masculinity is developing and using the skills and courage to protect and provide and serve other people. And I can think
mm,
of a few biblical examples of that. Noah, he worked faithfully and diligently to build that ark to obey God and protect his family. David courageously fought Goliath, but for God. He was all about God. You see Boaz, who shared his wealth with widows. Paul, even he didn't want to be reliant on others, so he practiced his skills so he could earn and provide for himself. And there's so many things we could talk, so many biblical examples, but we could probably just culminate with Jesus, who came not to be served, but to serve. So I think it's really important that we don't squash maybe the wiring in our boys, but look for ways to redirect it into good. And certainly there are
mm.
probably sin tendencies that we're going to want to correct, but also being mindful that, like, hey, that rough and tumble nature, not at the dinner table, but if you want to go wrestle outside, there's a place for that, or like how to kind of put them in the right place and showing them the right place to use these giftings. Real good, strong masculinity has been the backbone of every flourishing society.
Mm.
And, sometimes we bristle under this idea, I think our culture does, of that men and women are different and we have different roles. And that's actually a gift. So I'll
Yeah.
tell you, in the middle of the night, if I hear a noise and we sit up, like, I'm grateful that it's my husband going to investigate that. Like, I feel
Yeah.
protected and safe. And there are differences in the design. And I think it's important that we parse out for our boys what is sin and what is like God's good design, and how to use
Mm.
their gifts and their wiring and their interests for good.
That's so good. So, what does that actually look like? Because I've talked to so many other boy moms, and I mean, I myself, like, I through the toddler years, and now we've got almost a school age son, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, this is my first time parenting, and I don't know the boy mom thing. Like, how do we know what is crazy chaos that needs to be, redirected, or like this is normal, like this is just a boy being a boy, and then these are things that maybe we need to tame, because I think there's that balance there of like we don't want to squash their boyness and their good design of being boys, but also like we want to help and mold them and guide them on the right path. So how do we hold that tension and do that well?
Yeah. And that is such a great question, because so I have three boys I mentioned, and they're wired completely differently. So,
Mm,
and I would say that no one knows your son like you. Moms are experts on
yeah.
their boys. They know their weaknesses and strengths. They know the hardest parts about them. And so I would honestly say that the best way is to really hone your own relationship with God and root in the Bible and look to the Bible for how we train up these boys. I'm thinking of Deuteronomy 6, where God says to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to teach his laws and his commands to your kids, and teach them all the time as you walk down the road and when you get up and when you lie down. So I would say this is massively rooted in loving God, studying his word, connecting with our women at the local church too, other moms, understanding that here's the beauty. God's word doesn't say like all kids need to be like this or all boys need to be like this. There is so much latitude. God's creative. He wires our kids differently. So
Yeah.
I think it's really important to understand that, but hold on to the things that God is very clear about in his word. And also looking at the trends, and this is what I talk about a lot. some common threads that I think we do need to really instill in our boys is like respecting authority. And that's one of the 8 things. I think Tim Keller said it's respect for your parents that is the basis for every other kind of respect in your and
Mm,
every other kind of authority. So you're probably, if you're listening and you've been on the playground or you've watched kids, or maybe you're a teacher, or you volunteer in the classroom, you talk to the teachers and they'll tell you like things have really changed. Like people aren't really teaching their kids to respect authority.
mm.
That's one thing, so falling under teaching your kids God's commandments and then giving space outside of that, like we're holding them accountable to that and we're teaching them that. Outside of that, like, does he like rolling around in the dirt? Or if he can't stand getting dirty, but he wants to tinker on the piano, like, great, that's how God made him. Like, let's do those things, use those gifts to the glory of God.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. So you mentioned there's 8 things in your book that you point out that boys specifically need from their mom, and you say before the age of 10. So would you be willing to share like what are those key things that boys need from their mamas?
Absolutely. So, first is belonging. 20% of Americans are so lonely that it poses a health risk as significant as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. So, this
Mm,
is the world that our kids are growing up in. And moms are the best people on the planet to instill a sense of belonging in our kids. And I really wanted to start the book there because everything kind of flows through that. And part of that is teaching our boys their value. They're made in the image of God, their purpose, that God has called them according to a purpose, and that there are really simple ways to do this throughout your day. And one of those things is like family dinner, sitting around the table, just
mm,
basic connection. Another thing they need is relationships. They need to learn the skills to navigate relationships, including eye contact, conversation, self forgetfulness, how to not be so internally focused. And given that fact that I keep mentioning, that I think 8-year-old boys are spending 5.5 hours a day on digital entertainment. There's like a huge
wow.
opportunity cost there. So they're not negotiating relationships like we used to. They're not riding their bike around the block. They're not knocking on the neighbor's door or working out those conflicts that used to happen. So they need practice with that. And it's our job to help them. Authority, like I mentioned, humor. Moms get to bring in the humor. Anxiety is exploding right now. It's through the roof, but humor has actually been shown to reduce anxiety and really just bring out the joy in life. Jesus was actually super funny. Like I was reading the Bible as an adult. I'm like, oh my gosh, he was actually funny. Like, of course he was. Like humor came. All good things come from God. You may have noticed. I don't know if you're anything like me. Sometimes boys' sense of humor is like not where you want it to be. They bring in the potty joke. So you're like,
Yeah.
ugh. But educating our kids' sense of humor and showing them like, it's not something we're gonna we don't laugh at other people's expense. We don't laugh at
Mm,
keep the potties. So that kind of thing. Bravery. Kids are not taking risks today like they used to. How do we equip them to be courageous and take,
mm,
try, give it a shot? Tenderness. So you look at David and his heart. He had a tender heart. We want to bring about that tenderness and bravery in our boys. So I talk
mm.
about ways to do that. Creativity, emotional durability. I think those are I think that's it.
Oh, that's so good. I love that these are like really, like you mentioned in the beginning, like these are things that it's not like we have this checklist to go through. And every day we have this routine where we need to sit down and we need to teach our kids about belonging. It's very much just infused into our day to day rhythms. So for you, as mom of 3 boys plus some girls, and you've got a lot going on. Like you've been through the busyness and different stages of life. What does it look like for you practically in the day in, day out to kind of infuse this into your relationship and rhythms with your sons?
Yes. I love talking about this because there's so many opportunities to do this. My favorite right now, because all of my 6 kids, my oldest just got her permit. So I drive them all to school in the morning, and my youngest is
Mm.
8. So everyone can kind of like hang and understand the conversations that we're having. So on the way to school every morning, it takes us maybe 13, 15 minutes to get to school. We'll read a devotional, and I'll have whoever's not like scarfing their bagel still in the back seat will like read aloud the devotional. Or sometimes we'll do like a proverb, and then we'll talk about it. So we'll ask some questions and we'll just kind of toss it around. And full disclosure, this is really important. Maybe half the time it doesn't go well. Like maybe half the time someone's fighting or they're not listening or they're talking about something else or like I've lost my audience. So I really want to share that because I just want to encourage you that I don't think that any mom who's trying to disciple their kids is batting 100. I think we're all, or 1,000, I don't know. What's the perfect batting? Anyway, no one's doing it perfectly. Like, we're imperfect moms parenting imperfect kids. So there's like all kinds of trial and error and stress and struggle. But I just want to encourage you, like, toss that wet spaghetti at the wall, see what sticks. That I found, like, probably half the time at least, we have a really good conversation and someone has a little bit of insight. If I lead out with like oh man, this devotional convicted me because of whatever, they are way receptive to a humble mom submitted to God's word. And then I think the
Mm.
second one I would share is make some banana bread, or like if we've got some leftover birthday cake or whatever, the kids love. Will say, I think I got this from Sally Clarkson. It's like tea and Bible time. And so we'll have like iced tea or hot tea and get the cake out, and then I'll just read a chapter of the Bible, and their mouths are busy. So they're happy as a clam.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are just pretty easy. Taking a 5-minute walk with your kid around the block, that's a great reset. I think there's this that old parenting wisdom, like if everything's falling apart, take them outside or put them in water, like a bath or a pool. Turn on the sprinklers or go for a little walk. And honestly, that's powerful and it works. And while you're walking, share what God's been teaching you. Ask how their day's going. Prayerfully ask the Lord to show you a way to share some godly wisdom with your kid, and trust that even if it's not perfect that time, like your faithfulness is how God is gauging your mothering. So don't feel like you need to do some epic inspirational speech to your kids. Just be faithful to God's calling on your life.
That's so good. And so, again, encouraging, freeing, like takes a weight off. And I appreciate you being honest about that because it's hard in our very social media driven world to see these moms who are baking bread and then homeschooling their kids and having this beautiful crafting routine and outdoor nature walk with their boys. And I'm like, I don't even know if we're going to make it out of the house today. You know what I mean? Like some days it's just hard, but that doesn't negate the intention that we put in. It doesn't matter. I feel like this is something I've had to continue teaching myself and learning as I have been on this journey of mothering is like, it's not about getting it all right. It's just about the intention and showing up no matter what way it goes, because some days are just going to be crazy and chaos. But that doesn't mean that I'm a bad mom. It doesn't mean that like we're screwing up our kids, like I think we just need to give ourselves a break and being willing to show up and meet your kids where they're at and showing up how you can, like we're going to have hard days. They're going to be seasons that are busy and chaotic and wild. But I love that idea of just doing it with them, like building the relationship day in, day out with them.
Absolutely.
Well, I would love to know if you have any wisdom for a mom who's maybe in one of those seasons and just feeling like I'm in the trenches. This is wild. I feel like I don't know how to parent these boys. Like what would you say to her?
Oh man, I would just say keep going. Gosh, I'm thinking back to my early mothering. My first two kids were 15 months apart, and I quit my full-time job that was on a great path. Like I liked my job, but I knew I wanted to stay home and raise my kids. And I felt, I became a believer in high school, but that I remember trusting God for my salvation. Like, yeah, he saves me. That's great. And then I kind of felt looking back, like the day-to-day life stuff I could handle on my own. I
Mm,
felt like I can do this. I'm pretty competent, even through work. And then it wasn't until I just was staying home to raise a newborn and a 15-month-old that I was like, holy moly, I do not have what it takes to get this done. Like, we're barely getting through the day. And just feeling like a constant sense of failure and difficulty. And it was so hard. And I'm thankful for that season in retrospect, although I wouldn't want to go back there right now because it's so but I'm grateful because it showed me that I am dependent on the Lord in the day to day, moment to moment. And that was a grace that He gave me to show me my limited capacity, and that He's right there,
mm.
that I can turn to Him and ask for strength to get through. And He delivered. He gave me that strength. And I was going to every small group I could find of other moms. I'm like, holy moly, I'm drowning over here. And what I found was that that was such a commonality in these groups. Like I thought
Mm.
from the outside looking in that these moms would get together and they're perfect little, like the scene you described, perfect little baked bread and little blanket and all the matching outfits. And they'd be like, oh, this is how I'm perfect. How are you perfect? I thought it'd be like that.
Yeah.
These groups and these moms are sharing, they're like, I'm struggling today, man. Like I said something I shouldn't have. And everyone's, it's like a crazy revelation to me that all moms have a sense of like, this is very hard. So if it's hard, I think you're doing it right because you're in the trench and you're not giving up. And I would say it's a
Mm.
perfect opportunity to turn to the Lord. Every time there's a book by Paul E. Miller called A Praying Life. I've read this book multiple times. It's such a good book about prayer. But he says, like, every time in your day you have this feeling where you're like, help, I don't know what to do, direct it to God. That's a prayer. And watch him show up for you through people, through his word. I don't even remember the initial question you just asked me, but oh yeah, the mom in the hard season. That's right. Yes. It's Jesus beckoning you to himself. And maybe I'll end with this. God doesn't call you to ensure that your kid is a believer or to ensure that he sits perfectly still or to ensure that he's the best behaved student in the class. He calls you to be faithful to him, and your
Mm.
son's future and your son's heart posture is that's kind of above your pay grade, you know? So you be faithful to the Lord. You teach him, like Deuteronomy 6 says, teach him God's commands, his love, reflect the love of a good parent, like how God loves us, and trust him with the heart of your son.
Mm. Oh, that's so good. I love that. Okay, I'm curious on a little bit of a lighter note because I know I feel like as a boy mom, you just have to have a sense of humor because again, it's the wild west out here. So if there's a mom listening, because I have been this way, I remember when my son was getting into toddlerhood and everything's a mess. Now, I'm a type A person who wants to have a nice, tidy space. And if I'm being honest, most of the time there's just Legos everywhere and crayons everywhere and all the things. So, how do you, as a mom of boys, balance like, I want to have this sweet, precious life, the devotionals, these things, but let's just let our boys be boys. Like, what does that look like for you? Like, how do you bring back the joy, the humor, the fun into raising boys?
Mm, that's good. I think first of all, it always helps if there's someone you can Jim Halpert look at. Do you know from The Office how he always like stare at the camera like, is this really happening? So I will always like shoot a text to my husband, especially in those early days. They would often start with like, your son did this. Or like if it was something awesome and cute, I'd be like, look what my son did. Or look what our kid did. Like something horrible. I'm like, you know what your kid did today? But no, that's kind of funny. I'm kind of
It's
joking.
so
But
real.
yeah, but bring in some friends. If you can have a friend that you shoot off a text to, and I highly recommend even like Momco or your local church, these are the places we need each other. So I would say definitely
Yes.
you need community. We all have different levels of like acceptable mess. I think I've learned that through friends.
Yeah.
Like some of them, they'll be like, oh my gosh, it looks like a bomb went off in this room. And I'm like, it's a one sock on the floor. And I'm not a type A, I'm like a type B or whatever. So I think I have like a little bit of a higher threshold for like chaos, hence the 6 kids. I think that's how I stay sane. But,
Yeah.
sometimes if we want to preserve the home and our sanity, because clutter does stress me out too, we'll like set timers and say, like, okay, we're going to do a 10-minute blitz clean right now. And so we'll all just like clean up for the timer. Or, and you know what, really bringing your boys into helping. And I talk about this in the book, they need to help around the house. Like they're part of the community at
Mm.
home. And even from a very early age, they can start helping with these things. So I think my last thing I would close with is, reminds me, where does it say we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen? And with
Mm.
moms, we really have to do that because what is seen is like, it's like a horror movie. It's like, ring, it's like so bad
Yeah.
and messy. But what is unseen is it's like teaching our kids this long game of like helping and trying again and making a mess and cleaning it up. And I have this picture in my mind when you said that Legos. We had a clear jar of, I want to call them Hama beads because that's what we called them when I was a kid, but they're like those perler beads, those like little
Oh,
plastic ones
yeah.
that you like iron together. It was like 5,000 beads. And when I had 4 kids of like 5 and under, I remember one of them pulled out that they like got their hands on it and dumped the whole thing out in the kitchen. And
Oh,
I'm like, this
man.
is it. This is how I die. Like, I'm not going to get there.
Yeah.
But anyway, you're not alone. Everyone has these like crazy stories and just your ability to take a breath, and your sons are watching you. So if you can take a breath and go, wow, it's messy. Wow, I'm super overwhelmed at this mess. Lord, help me. Like, I will start saying my prayers out loud. Like, Lord, will you give me the patience to get through this? So there are just, give yourself grace, take a deep breath. There will be a day when there is no mess in your house. I don't know when that day is. It's not here for me yet, but it's coming for us all one day. So just take a breath, look to the Lord, and love your kids in it.
Man, I relate to that so much. There have been so many times. And I think back to when I first became a mom, like first experience of toddlerhood craziness. And those of you who followed my Jude saga on Instagram of like waking up to him dumping out our entire thing of protein powder or
Oh,
having a fun little experiment time with my skincare and stuff like that. So many of those things now I can look back and laugh on, but I just remember feeling like, this is just I don't know if I can do this. Like, but it's such a refining thing. I feel like raising boys and a healing thing, like learning to be more gentle and more patient, like the things that I had no patience for. Now I'm like, you know what? It's not the end of the world. It's just something we can clean up and then we'll keep moving forward. And I don't know, it's just been really interesting, like learning to be playful again and be okay with the mess. Yes, I still don't want my house to be crazy all the time. I want to be able to walk on the floor and not step on 100 Legos. But it is really sweet, like just having the sense of joy and fun and playfulness of boyhood is something really sweet. And I love that there are more moms like embracing that because I look back to the early days and I'm like, I almost missed that because I was so worried about having a perfectly clean home and the perfectly behaved son, and that's just so not what it's about at the end of the
mm.
day.
Yeah, that's so good.
Well, thank you so much for just doing this work, doing this research, and then packaging it up in the playbook that all of the boy moms have so desperately wanted and needed for so long. So, before we go, is there any last advice or encouragement you want to leave with the boy moms who are listening?
Ooh, you know what? I want to share one thing. I would say trust God and be faithful to his calling on your life. I think the and I said this in the introduction of the book. My hope is not that moms see this book as like I have to do these things like a, stressed out checklist, but that they would say that a mom would rest in the finished work of Jesus and trust him with the heart of her son and then just be faithful to her calling. So I think the best mothering is really built on the foundation of a robust faith in Jesus. So don't put that on the back burner. And I hope that you have fun. I hope that you have fun because if we can like let ourselves, we are going to have a ton of fun. And there's so much fun to be had as a boy mom. So you're not alone. And I hope that you get so much out of the book. And if you read it, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear if you enjoyed it. You can find me on Instagram at Molly DeFrank.
I love it. Well, I'm so excited. My copy's in the mail. I'm like getting ready to highlight probably the whole thing. I'm so excited. So, can't wait to get my hands on this book. You guys definitely need to get a copy as well. I'll make sure it's linked for you guys. But, Molly, thank you so much for being here. I've loved this conversation. I'm just so grateful for the work that you have done and the way that you are just trailblazing for the boy moms and keeping it real.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to tune in to another episode of the Byword Show. I love having you here, and your support truly means the world to me. If you enjoyed this episode, would you leave a quick review? It really helps our community grow and reach more women. If you want more, you can shop my books, Waking Up, Living Open, and Love Is on Amazon, and be sure to sign up for my email list so you always get the latest news. I can't wait to chat again soon, but in the meantime, be sure to come hang out with me on social media, and remember, I'm cheering you on.